Hello, Shoyan here. I'm a carpenter working in Japan. Today, I'm installing Kamoi in the Japanese room, in the closet, Tokonoma, and Gawa, and the closet in the Gawa. I install it in 4 places. Today, I'm installing a Kamoi. Kamoi is also called Uchinorimono. It's used in the closet, in Gawa, and on the sliding door. We don't call it a Kamoi if it is used in a Tokonoma. Instead, we call it an otoshigake. First, I measure the Kamoi's height. I check the 4 corners when measuring the height. When I mark in the middle, I use thread as a reference and mark it from there. The Kamoi's height is 1900 millimeters from the shiki. They are getting higher nowadays. Sometimes they're up to 2 meters. When I started as a carpenter, the height in an old house was about 1740 millimeters. At that time, 1760 millimeters was a standard height. The standard height became 1790 millimeters after a while. Today, Japanese-style rooms are becoming a mix of Japanese and Western styles with tatami mats, so they are becoming higher. After measuring the Kamoi's height, I cut a mortise. We call a small Kamoi's mortise and tenon a mechi. There will be 5 Kamoi: closet, Tokonoma, another closet, Gawa, and a sliding door. Each of those mortises and tenons have a separate shape and installation method. The shapes vary depending on how they will be used and installed. I'm cutting this mortise in a triangle shape. Nowadays, I rarely cut in triangles. It's very fast to cut since I don't need to chisel off a lot. However, I need to cut an angle tenon on the Kamoi, so it's about the same. Since I cut the mortise, I trace around the Kamoi. Tracing the column's shape to the Kamoi to mark the dimensions is called hikaru. The Kamoi is mounted on a hanyaku. It's one of the tools that supports the Kamoi. Hanyaku means an experienced person, half person. It is just like letting the apprentice hold the Kamoi. Not an independent full person, an experienced half person. That's where the name came from. The Kamoi I'm installing now is for an Gawa, and it's 2.7 meters. There are grooves on the bottom edge. The Kamoi's 3 tenon shoulders will be attached. The bottom edge and the both ends will be attached to the pillar. I attach the Kamoi to the pillar and trace the actual lengths. I measure the top and bottom before marking. The top side of the pillar is 2 mm narrower. It's an ideal amount. Usually, a Kamoi is made 2 mm longer. So if I cut 2 mm longer, the Kamoi and shiki's lengths will match. I also cut the tenon on the other side. I intentionally cut this side at an angle to the pillar, so I also cut the tenon angle. As I mentioned earlier, it's easy to cut the mortise, but it's a hassle compared to square mortise, because I need to cut the tenon angled. Now that I've cut the Kamoi, I install it. Before that, I make a jack rod. When installing a Kamoi, I forcefully widen outward the pillar. This jack rod is used for that. I only need one jack rod since I set it moving from the wide space to the narrow space. I widen the space as much as possible using jack rod, then hit it from above. The Kamoi is installed, I remove the jack rod. After removing the jack rod, I hit the pillar strongly from the back and move it back into place. This is important. Then I adjust the Kamoi to the center and secure it with screws. Well, that went nicely. It looks like it's growing from the pillar. I installed the Kamoi for the closet on the far right. To install Kamoi in rooms, I must follow certain steps. I set the jack to the place that I can widen first. I widen the closet to the Tokonoma in the middle. But I can't widen the Engawa's closet since the space is only 90 centimeters. So I set the jack rod in two places that I can widen. The first is from the edge. When I set it from the middle, the load at both ends is too much. I set it in order from the end. I won't wind it at the closet. I join the Kamoi from the back by dado. I install it in this order. Next, I install the otoshigake in the middle of the Tokonoma. Unlike the Kamoi, this otoshigake doesn't have a groove on the bottom. So I chisel off the full size of it and attach the tennis shoulder only to the front and back. The otoshigake's height is not the same as the other Kamoi. I saw it one step higher. Originally, a Tokonoma was where a great man like a lord would sit. When a lord is wearing armor, it won't look good if his helmet falls off when he stands up. Well, I guess there are some vestiges of that. Finally, I install the closet's Kamoi in the Engawa. I cut the mortise the same size as the Kamoi and install it smoothly from the back to the front. I only cut and attach the tennis shoulder on the front. It's the simplest way to install it. The real last part has arrived. I install the Kamoi on the sliding door. This Kamoi is the trickiest one. One side will fit into the pillar, but the other side that I'm cutting now will be mounted on the Kamoi. This kind of installation is seldom done. This last Kamoi looks quite long. As this room is 6 tatami mat sizes, the Kamoi will be 3.6 meters. There is only one groove on the 3.6 meter Kamoi. The fitting is 1.8 meters square. The 1.8 meter square fitting will be opened and closed. There is no doorstop at the end. It will stop at the groove. It's a tricky Kamoi to install. I cut off the part where the Kamoi will be fitted, then I forcefully place it. I measure the length at this stage. Finally, I was able to install the last Kamoi. To be honest, it was tough to install 5 Kamoi. It took the whole day. I'm relieved that I was able to install them. Now that the Kamoi in the Japanese style room are installed, I'll install the frame above them and start from the ceiling. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.